Now, it's been a while since I've done a classic old school wet fly on here, and honestly, I may have bitten off more than I can chew with today's fly. But then again, I do get a lot of comments saying, hey, I like your videos because you show that it's okay not to be perfect. Well, I'm going to double down on that philosophy with this one. The pattern is called the Green Peter. Now, I believe it originated over in the UK, and it's still a pretty popular fly for loch fishing over there, which, you know, that's what we'd call lake fishing. But there's no reason this won't do well here in the States. Now, there are several examples of this pattern out there. The one I'm tying I got from Taff Price's Fly Tying, an International Guide. And he mentions that it can be fished either wet or dry. The one I want to tie today is more of a wet school style, meaning that while I'm using a rooster feather for the palmered hackle, I'm still going to tie it kind of swept back to give it that old school wet fly look. Now, it's not a real easy tie. Some of the components can be a little tricky, as you'll see in a minute. And the first one is that the body is made out of a dyed green seal's fur. Now, if you've never worked with a seal's fur or an imitation seal's fur, you'll know it can be a little bit tricky. But if you don't have seal's fur, just use any kind of buggy synthetic green dubbing. And the second tricky part is that the wings are from a hen pheasant, and this can be just a little bit more difficult to use than, say, a duck or turkey slips for a wing. Now, that being said, if you tie this thing and don't get it perfect, don't sweat it. You've probably still got a fishable fly. The one you're about to see, it's far from perfect, but it's not going on the cover of a magazine. It's going in my fly box. So there's one in the vise, a Green Peter, pretty classic, old school, Western European, British, UK type fly. Now, Taff Price said sizes for this are 8 to 12. I'm going on a size 10. It's one extra long barbless wet fly hook. And I'm going to put down a base of black thread. You could also use olive for this. First thing I'm going to catch in, some oval gold tinsel in a size small. Don't worry about having a drop off right there. You don't need a smooth taper. We got a pretty buggy body, so go ahead and put a good bit of wax on here. And we're going to dub this with a green seal's fur, and this is an actual seal's fur. I got it from somebody on Etsy. If all you got is a synthetic, that's fine too, but either of them, they're hard to work with, and you'll see in a second. So we're going to put a pretty long noodle on here, but we're going to have to tighten it up several times as we wrap up. And probably no matter how tight you try to get it, you're going to end up with a fairly buggy body. So after several wraps, just, keep trying to tighten it up here and take it all the way up front. Okay, very buggy. I'm going to just pull a little bit of this back right here, and we'll be able to compact some of that when we wrap our palmered hackle down it. And for the palmered hackle, just a brown. I did see a couple of recipes that had a ginger. I'm going to catch this in, and it's a rooster, but if you have a good, dry fly cape, just try to pick some of the softer feathers that are, toward the underside. We're going to put 2 wraps kind of up front and then palmer it back, and fairly open wraps as we go back. Okay, when you get to the back, take your oval tinsel and then capture it in at the back and then wrap it on up front. And we are going to trap some of these. Zigzag it if you want, but just live with the fact that you're going to trap several of these fibers. Now let's snip these excess pieces right here. Might be able to just break this one, but I'm going to go ahead and snip it. Now let's really lock this in before we brush any of this body out. And by brushing it out, I just mean grab some Velcro and then just, try to pluck it. Maybe you get a little bit of that green fuzz coming out. And just really my goal here is to get all those fibers kind of swept back. Now the next thing we're going to catch in is the wing. Now here's just 2 flight feathers from that hen pheasant, skin I told you about. Now I did take a slip from a right and a left. Now they weren't perfectly matched, but again, not a perfect fly, and I don't think it's that big of a deal. So I've laid them across each other, kind of overlapping a little bit, and I'm just going to push them back to where they're about, a little bit past the bend of the hook. Now I'm going to pinch the feathers and the hook at the same time. Do a fairly loose pinch wrap up here, the second one, and then take a look at it. And I think those are going to be fine. Again, not perfect, but... And that one rolled around. Can I fix it? Sure. Sure I can. Now just a few tight wraps here. Is that going to be fine? Yeah, it's going to be fine. So let's snip this excess. Now I'm going to take a few extra wraps right here just to try to smooth this area out so that I'll have a smoother area to wrap this front hackle. And this front hackle is another feather from that same brown, half cape I was using. I'm going to catch it in right in front of these wings. Several wraps going forward. We'll get rid of this stem. Now Price did say this fly is fished wet and dry, but I'm going to try and sweep these back. I want the wet fly look, so I don't want them necessarily coming out perpendicular to the hook. And that one just broke. Well, if that happens, you know what you can do? Just create another little tie-in point like that right there, and we'll try again. We could back up and take that other piece out, or we could just live with it. We might end up with a little bit bigger of a head, but you know what? I'm gonna be okay with that. Now let's try it again. Again, I want these fibers kind of swept back, and if they don't do that naturally, we'll do that by wrapping a head going a little farther back. So right now it's looking like a dry fly with this hackle sticking way out, and maybe you want it like that. If you're going to fish this as a dry fly, yeah, nothing wrong with having some hackle sticking out, but I'm going to try to sweep them all back. So how I'll do that, just grab everything and give it a pinch, and then take a lot of thread wraps going back and building a big head here. Okay, we got it swept back pretty well. I think we're ready for the whip finish. Now, I don't think there's a whole lot of cleanup needed for a fly like this, especially if it's just a fishing fly, but maybe you want to, get rid of any of these fibers sticking forward. But there you go. Pretty fuzzy looking, far from perfect, old school wet fly called the Green Peter. So I appreciate you watching, everybody. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.